The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete driveway as Monica's voice drifted through our kitchen window. I'd been fixing the transmission on my beat-up Ford when her words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. God, Brian. He's so clueless. He thinks I'm working late again at the firm. He still believes I'm his loyal little housewife, sitting at home waiting for him. Her laughter was sharp, cutting through the humid August air of our industrial port town like broken glass. I crouched beside my truck, heart hammering against my ribs, as 23 years of marriage crumbled in real time. "When are you going to tell him?" came a man's voice through her phone speaker. Brian. I knew that name. Her boss at Hartwell and Associates, the mid-tier law firm where she'd been working for the past 2 years. Soon, Monica replied, and I could picture her pacing our kitchen in those expensive heels she'd started wearing. Once I get the promotion locked down. Eddie's been useful, but I need someone who can actually provide the lifestyle I deserve. My name is Eddie Kowalski. I'm 43, built like the stevedore I used to be before I started my security consulting business. People in this town know me as the guy who fixes problems, who keeps his mouth shut, who married up when Monica Patterson agreed to be my wife fresh out of law school. What they don't know is that I've got a memory like a steel trap and a talent for seeing things others miss. The kitchen door creaked open. I grabbed my wrench and pretended to focus on the transmission as Monica stepped onto our cracked concrete porch. "Eddie, what are you doing out here so late?" I looked up at her, taking in the perfectly styled blonde hair, the makeup that was too fresh for someone who'd supposedly been working until 10 p.m., and the new dress that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. "Transmission's acting up again," I said, wiping my hands on an old rag. "Figured I'd try to fix it before it dies completely. How was work, honey?" Her green eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or annoyance at being interrupted. "Fine, just the usual corporate law stuff. You wouldn't understand." There it was, the dismissive tone she'd perfected over the past year, the subtle way she made me feel small. But tonight, for the first time, I understood exactly what was happening. "Right," I said, forcing a smile. "Well, I'm almost done here. Why don't you head inside? I'll be in soon." She hesitated, studying my face like she was trying to read my thoughts. "You're not upset about anything, are you?" "Should I be?" "No, of course not. You're just being weird." I shrugged and turned back to the truck. "Just tired, I guess. Long day." Monica lingered for another moment before going back inside. Through the window, I watched her pour herself a generous glass of wine and settle onto our couch with her laptop. Probably texting Brian, I realized, planning their next rendezvous while I fixed the truck that would drive her there. The thing about Betrayal is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started criticizing everything about our life together, the mysterious charges on our credit card that she'd explained away as client dinners, the fact that she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring, claiming it got in the way at work. I finished up with the truck and headed inside, my mind already working through possibilities. Monica was in the shower, probably washing off Brian's cologne, I thought grimly. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter, and for a brief moment, I considered looking through it. But I didn't need to. I'd heard enough. Instead, I opened my laptop and did what any reasonable person would do in 2023. I checked social media. Monica's Facebook profile loaded, and my stomach dropped. Every photo of us together had been deleted. Our wedding pictures, vacation shots, even the silly selfies we'd taken just last Christmas, all gone. Her relationship status had been changed to, "It's complicated," but she'd made a mistake. A big one. I scrolled through her recent posts and found what I was looking for. 3 days ago, she'd shared a photo from some legal conference, standing next to a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit. The caption read, "Amazing keynote from my mentor and boss, Brian Hartwell. So grateful to be learning from the best." The comments were telling. Her law school friends gushing about how lucky she was, how handsome her boss looked, how they made such a great team. Monica had liked every single comment, including one that said, "You two should start your own firm together." I took a screenshot of everything. Then I updated my own relationship status. In a relationship with my roommate. 20 minutes later, Monica emerged from the bathroom in her silk robe, hair wrapped in a towel. She grabbed her phone and immediately started scrolling. I pretended to watch TV, but I was really watching her face in the reflection of our black television screen. Her expression shifted from casual interest to confusion to pure panic in about 30 seconds. Eddie, she said, her voice carefully controlled. Did you change something on Facebook? Yeah, I updated my status. Figured I should be accurate. She stared at me, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. What do you mean? Well, we're not really in a relationship anymore, are we? We're more like roommates at this point. Separate lives, separate interests, separate beds half the time. Oh my God, stop being so paranoid. She exploded, her careful composure cracking. You're imagining things. We're fine. I turned to look at her directly, keeping my voice calm. You're right. I'll stop being paranoid. She relaxed slightly, thinking she'd won. That's when she made her second mistake. She looked back at her phone and saw her own Facebook notifications. Friends and family commenting on my status update, asking questions, expressing concern. Her face went white. You need to change that back, she said quietly. Why? I thought you said we were fine. We are fine, but people are going to get the wrong idea. What idea would that be, Monica? She realized her mistake then. If we were really fine, if there really was nothing going on, my status update would just be a silly joke between married couples. Her panic had revealed the truth. I'm going to bed, she said, grabbing her phone and wine glass. Good night, roommate, I called after her. She froze in the doorway but didn't turn around. After a moment, she continued upstairs, and I heard our bedroom door slam shut. I sat in the dark living room for another hour, planning. Monica thought she was the smart one, the lawyer, the one with all the advantages. But she'd forgotten something important about me. I'd grown up in this town. I knew everyone, and everyone knew me. In a place like Millfield, reputation was everything, and secrets had a way of bubbling up through the cracks in the sidewalk, like crude oil from the old refineries. Monica was about to learn that underestimating your opponent is the first step toward losing everything. The next morning, Monica left for work without saying a word. She grabbed her coffee, her briefcase, and her car keys, avoiding eye contact as she headed for the garage. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed her BMW out of the driveway, talking on her phone before she'd even reached the street. Calling Brian, no doubt. Damage control. I had the day free. One of the advantages of running my own security consulting business was setting my own schedule. Most of my clients were local businesses that needed someone to install cameras, check their alarm systems, or investigate employee theft. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave me skills that were about to come in handy. My first stop was Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar downtown where my oldest friend Frank worked as the day bartender. Frank had been a cop for 20 years before retiring, and he still had connections throughout the city. More importantly, he was one of the few people who knew me before I met Monica, back when I was just another dock worker with big dreams and calloused hands. The bar was empty except for one regular nursing a beer and watching sports highlights on the mounted TV. Frank was wiping down glasses, his gray hair catching the light from the neon beer signs. Eddie, he said, looking up as I walked in. Little early for you, isn't it? Not drinking, I said, taking a seat at the bar. Need some advice. Frank set down the glass and studied my face. Monica? How'd you know? You've got that look, same one I used to see on guys when they found out their wives were stepping out. What'd you find? I told him about the phone conversation, the Facebook changes, the late nights and new clothes. Frank listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting in understanding. So what are you thinking? He asked when I finished. I'm thinking I need proof before I do anything stupid. Smart. Divorce court's going to want evidence if you're planning to fight for anything. Who said anything about divorce court? Frank raised an eyebrow. Eddie, whatever you're thinking, just remember, revenge is a dish best served cold and legal. I'm not planning to hurt anyone, Frank. But Monica thinks she's been so clever, playing me for a fool while she climbs the corporate ladder on her back. Maybe it's time she learned what happens when you underestimate people. Frank poured himself a shot of whiskey and slid one across to me. To making them squirm, he said. We drank, and I felt the burn of alcohol mixing with the fire of betrayal in my gut. My next stop was the Millfield Public Library, where I spent 2 hours researching Brian Hartwell. The internet is a beautiful thing when you know how to use it. Within an hour, I had his home address, his wife's name, Linda, his kids' ages, college-aged twins, his country club membership, and his recent court cases. Brian Hartwell was 51 years old, a partner at Hartwell and Associates. The firm was named after his father, and by all appearances, a pillar of the community. He served on the hospital board, donated to local charities, and lived in a mansion in Millfield's most exclusive neighborhood. He was also married to Linda Hartwell, née Morrison, daughter of the Morrison family that owned half the commercial real estate in town. Linda was on the boards of 3 different charitable organizations and had been featured in the local newspaper's society pages at least a dozen times in the past year. In other words, Brian had a lot to lose. I printed out everything I could find and headed home. Monica's car was still gone, probably working late again, I thought sarcastically. I used the time to search through our home office, looking for anything that might be useful. In the back of Monica's desk drawer, hidden behind a stack of legal pads, I found a hotel receipt from the Riverside Inn. The date was from last week, when Monica had claimed to be at a legal conference in the state capitol. The problem was, the Riverside Inn was here in Millfield, about 10 minutes from our house. The receipt was for one night, charged to her credit card. Our credit card, technically, since I was the primary account holder. I photographed the receipt with my phone and put it back exactly where I'd found it. That evening, Monica came home around 9, carrying takeout from an expensive downtown restaurant. She was trying to act normal, chatting about her day and asking about mine, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "How was the conference last week?" I asked casually as we ate. She didn't miss a beat. "Boring, mostly. A lot of procedural stuff about corporate compliance. Nothing you'd find interesting." "Where was it again?" "The Marriott downtown." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just wondering. Seemed like you were pretty tired when you got back." "Long days," she said, not meeting my eyes. After dinner, Monica retreated to her laptop while I pretended to watch television. But I was really watching her, studying the way she typed, the way she smiled at her screen, the way she kept glancing at me to make sure I wasn't paying attention. Around 10:30, she announced she was going out to meet her friend Ava for drinks. "This late?" I asked. "Ava's going through a rough divorce. She needs someone to talk to." Ava Chen was Monica's closest friend from law school, now working at the same firm. She was sharp, ambitious, and had always struck me as the type of person who collected secrets like some people collected stamps. "Tell Ava the first said hi," I said. Monica grabbed her purse and keys. "Don't wait up." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my truck outside Brennan's, the upscale nightclub where Monica's BMW was parked. I had a clear view of the entrance from across the street, and I settled in to wait. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:15, Monica emerged from the club. She wasn't with Ava, she was with Brian Hartwell, and they were all over each other. His hands were on her waist, her arms around his neck, kissing like teenagers in the parking lot. I took pictures with my phone, the camera flash disabled. The streetlights provided enough illumination to clearly show their faces. They got into Brian's silver Mercedes and drove off together. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and vindication. They went to Brian's downtown condo, a converted warehouse in the trendy arts district. I parked across the street and watched the lights come on in a 5th-floor apartment. Through the large windows, I could see silhouettes moving around, embracing, disappearing deeper into the apartment. I sat there for an hour, taking occasional photos of the building, the Mercedes in the parking garage, anything that might be useful later. Then I drove home to our empty house and our cold bed. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. Monica thought she was playing chess, while I played checkers. She was about to find out that I'd been playing a different game entirely. Friday morning brought rain, and the perfect opportunity for phase 1 of my plan. Monica was in the shower when I made my move, carefully placing a GPS tracker under her car's rear bumper. It was a small device I used for my security business, designed to help track stolen vehicles or monitor company cars. Now it would help me track my cheating wife. I also made a few other preparations. While Monica blow-dried her hair, I logged into our joint credit card account and set up text alerts for every transaction. Then I called our cell phone provider and upgraded our plan to include detailed location tracking for both phones, a feature I told them was for security purposes. "Morning, honey," Monica said as she came downstairs, dressed in a new outfit I'd never seen before. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied. "You got in pretty late. How's Ava doing?" "Better. She just needed to vent about her ex-husband. You know how it is." I nodded sympathetically. "Divorce can be messy. Lucky we don't have to worry about that, right?" Monica's smile flickered for just a moment. "Right. Lucky us." After she left for work, I spent the morning monitoring her movements through the GPS tracker. She went straight to Hartwell and Associates, as expected. But at lunch, instead of eating at her usual spots, she drove to the Riverside Inn, the same hotel from the receipt. I waited 30 minutes, then drove over myself. Brian's Mercedes was in the parking lot. I took photos of both vehicles, including the license plates, then settled in to wait. They emerged 2 hours later, looking satisfied and disheveled. Monica was fixing her hair as they walked to their cars, Brian's hand resting possessively on her lower back. I followed Monica back to her office, then headed home to prepare for the evening's entertainment. That night, Monica announced she was working late on a big case. I wished her luck and settled in to watch TV, but as soon as her car left the driveway, I was in motion. The GPS tracker showed her heading downtown, not toward her office. She parked at Brennan's again, the same nightclub from the previous night. I gave her a 15-minute head start, then drove over myself. This time, I didn't just watch from across the street. I went inside. Brennan's was busy for a Friday night, filled with young professionals and older men trying to recapture their youth. I found a seat at the bar with a clear view of the dining area and ordered a beer. Monica and Brian were at a corner table, holding hands across the white tablecloth. They were deep in conversation, leaning close together like lovers planning their future, which, I realized, they probably were. I nursed my beer and watched them for an hour. They were completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to everything else around them. Monica laughed at Brian's jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, gazed into his eyes like he was the most fascinating man in the world. It was sickening, and it was exactly what I needed. When they finally got up to leave, I was ready. I'd already paid my tab and positioned myself near the exit. As they walked toward the door, Monica's arm linked through Brian's. I stepped forward. "Monica, what a surprise!" She froze like a deer in headlights. Brian, to his credit, recovered quickly, extending his hand with a politician's smile. "You must be Eddie," he said smoothly. "I'm Brian Hartwell, Monica's boss. She's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, squeezing just hard enough to let him know I worked with my hands for a living. "All good things, I hope. Monica told me she was working late tonight. Didn't expect to find her here." "We were discussing a case over dinner," Monica said quickly. "Client development. It's important to build relationships in this business." "I'm sure it is," I said, looking directly at Brian. "What kind of law do you practice, Mr. Hartwell?" "Corporate law, mostly. Mergers and acquisitions, contract negotiations, nothing too exciting." "Sounds lucrative, though. Nice car out there. Is that the new Mercedes S-Class?" Brian's smile tightened slightly. "You know cars?" "I know a lot of things." "Well, I don't want to interrupt your business meeting. Monica, don't work too hard. We have that thing tomorrow, remember?" Monica looked confused. "What thing?" "The barbecue at your sister's house. You promised we'd be there by noon." It was a complete lie. Monica's sister lived in California, and we hadn't spoken to her in months. But Monica couldn't contradict me without raising Brian's suspicions. "Oh, right," she said weakly. "I forgot." "No problem. Just don't stay out too late tonight. You know how cranky you get when you don't get enough sleep." I kissed her cheek, nodded politely to Brian, and walked away. But I didn't go far. I waited in the parking lot, hidden behind a large SUV, and watched them emerge from the club 10 minutes later. They were arguing. I couldn't hear the words, but their body language told the story. Monica was gesturing frantically. Brian was shaking his head, and both of them kept glancing around the parking lot like they expected me to jump out from behind a car. Finally, Brian got in his Mercedes and drove away. Monica stood alone in the parking lot for several minutes, talking on her phone, probably calling him, trying to smooth things over. I waited until she got in her BMW and headed home. Then I made my move. Brian's condo building had a parking garage with keycard access, but the pedestrian entrance was just a regular door with a simple lock. It took me about 30 seconds to pick it, another skill from my younger, less legal days. I took the elevator to the 5th floor and found Brian's apartment. The hallway was empty, dimly lit by fancy sconces that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Brian's Mercedes was in the garage, so I knew he was home. I could hear music playing inside his apartment, something classical and pretentious. I pulled out a small tube of superglue and squeezed it into his door lock, making sure to work it deep into the mechanism. Then I took a bright red lipstick, one of Monica's, which I'd borrowed from her purse, and wrote "Cheater" across his door in large, bold letters. Finally, I placed a condom on his doormat, along with a printed photo of him and Monica kissing in the parking lot the night before. The whole operation took less than 5 minutes. I was back in my truck and halfway home when my phone buzzed with a text message from Monica. "Where are you?" "Home," I replied. "Watching TV. Where are you?" "Leaving the office. Be home soon." 20 minutes later, she walked through our front door, and I could tell immediately that something had happened. She was agitated, checking her phone constantly, pacing around the living room like a caged animal. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine. Just tired." Her phone rang, and she grabbed it eagerly. "Hello?" Her face fell. "Oh, hi, Mom." She glanced at me, then walked into the kitchen for privacy. I turned up the TV volume, but strained to listen to her conversation. "No, everything's fine. Yes, Eddie's here. What post? I don't know what you're talking about. Mom, I have to go. I'll call you tomorrow." She came back into the living room, her face pale. "My mother saw your Facebook post. She wants to know if we're having problems." "What did you tell her? That you were just being stupid?" I nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe I should call her myself. Explain that we're just going through a rough patch. You know, with your new job and all the late nights, we barely see each other anymore." "Don't you dare call my mother." "Why not? I like your mother. We always got along well." Monica stared at me, and I could see her trying to figure out my angle. The problem was, I didn't have just one angle. I had dozens of them, all working together like gears in a machine. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it, and her face went white. "I'm going to bed," she said abruptly. "Good night, honey. Sweet dreams." She headed upstairs, and I heard our bedroom door close. Then, a few minutes later, I heard her on the phone again, her voice low and urgent. I smiled and settled back into my chair. Phase 1 was complete. Brian Hartwell was about to have a very interesting weekend. Saturday morning brought chaos in the form of my phone ringing at 7 a.m. It was Monica, calling from upstairs. "Eddie, can you come up here, now?" I found her sitting on our bed, laptop open, face flushed with anger and panic. On the screen was Brian's Facebook page, and someone had posted photos of his vandalized door to his wall, along with a caption. "Looks like someone's not happy with Brian Hartwell's extracurricular activities." "Did you do this?" she demanded. I examined the photos with what I hoped looked like genuine surprise. The red lipstick had smeared slightly, making the word cheater look even more damning. The condom was clearly visible on the doormat, along with what appeared to be a photograph. "Do what? Post this? I don't even know how to post on someone else's Facebook page." "Don't lie to me, Eddie. This has your fingerprints all over it." "Monica, I was here all night. You saw me when you got home from your late night at the office." I emphasized the last words just enough to remind her of her own lies. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned back to the laptop. "Someone's commenting on it." I leaned over her shoulder to read the comments. There were already a dozen of them, from colleagues, clients, and friends. The general tone was shock and curiosity, with several people asking if Brian was okay and whether he'd called the police. "Looks like someone really doesn't like your boss," I said mildly. Monica's phone started ringing. She looked at the caller ID and winced. "It's Linda Hartwell, Brian's wife." This was getting interesting. Monica declined the call, but it immediately started ringing again. This time it was Brian himself. "Hello?" Monica answered, walking into our bathroom for privacy. I could hear her side of the conversation through the thin door. "I don't know who did it. No, I don't think he knows anything. We need to be more careful. I can't talk right now. He's right here." When she emerged from the bathroom, her face was grim. "Brian's coming over. He wants to talk to both of us." "About what?" "The vandalism. He thinks maybe you saw something suspicious around his building." I almost laughed. Brian Hartwell was coming to my house to ask me about the vandalism I'd committed against him because he was sleeping with my wife. The irony was delicious. "Sure," I said. "Happy to help however I can." Brian arrived an hour later, driving a different car, a black BMW that I assumed belonged to his wife. He looked like he hadn't slept much, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled. "Eddie," he said, shaking my hand with false warmth. "Thanks for agreeing to see me. I know this is unusual." "No problem. Monica told me what happened. That's terrible." We sat in our living room, Monica perched nervously on the edge of the couch, while Brian and I faced each other across the coffee table like negotiators. "The thing is," Brian said, "this feels personal. Someone went to a lot of trouble to embarrass me publicly. And given that you were at the restaurant last night, you think I did this? I asked, letting surprise and hurt color my voice. I'm not accusing you of anything, but you seemed upset when you saw Monica and me together. Upset? Why would I be upset? Monica explained that you were discussing a case. Business dinner, right, honey? Monica nodded quickly. Exactly. Just business. Brian studied my face, looking for tells. But I'd been playing poker with dock workers and security guards for 20 years. I knew how to keep my expression neutral. The photos, Brian said carefully. Someone took pictures of my door after the vandalism, but they also left a photograph of Monica and me. What kind of photograph? I asked innocently. Brian glanced at Monica, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. It was taken outside Brennan's, Wednesday night. It showed us talking. Talking? Very close together, Monica said quickly. It could be misinterpreted. I nodded slowly, as if processing this information. So someone's been following you? Taking pictures? That's creepy. Have you called the police? Not yet, Brian said. I wanted to talk to you first. Well, I can tell you it wasn't me. I was here Wednesday night, working on my truck. Mrs. Wilkes next door saw me. She always complains about the noise when I work late. This was true. Mrs. Wilkes was a retired busybody who kept track of everyone's comings and goings. She had indeed seen me working on my truck, after I'd returned from following Monica and Brian. Brian looked frustrated. Then who would do something like this? Could be anyone, I said thoughtfully. You're a prominent lawyer, you probably have enemies, disgruntled clients, opposing counsel, people you've beaten in court. Hell, could even be someone jealous of your success. Or, I continued, warming to the theme, maybe it's related to Monica. She's been making a name for herself at your firm, right? Maybe someone doesn't like seeing her get ahead so quickly. Monica shot me a sharp look, but Brian was nodding. That's possible. There have been some tensions in the office lately. What kind of tensions? I asked. Well, Monica's been promoted twice in 2 years. Some of the other associates think she's getting special treatment. Are they right? I asked, looking directly at Brian. Of course not, he said quickly. Monica's earned every promotion through hard work and talent. I'm sure she has, I said. Monica's always been very good at getting what she wants. The double meaning wasn't lost on either of them. Monica's face flushed red, while Brian shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Anyway, Brian said, standing up, I should let you folks get on with your weekend. Eddie, if you think of anything that might help, please let me know. Absolutely. And Brian, you might want to think about installing a security camera in your hallway. Whoever did this might come back. After Brian left, Monica and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Enjoying what? Watching me squirm, making me uncomfortable. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd married 23 years ago had been softer somehow, more genuine. This version of Monica was all sharp edges and calculated moves. I'm not making you uncomfortable, Monica. Your choices are making you uncomfortable. What's that supposed to mean? It means that if you weren't doing anything wrong, you wouldn't have anything to worry about. She stared at me for a long moment, then got up and walked toward the stairs. I'm going shopping. Don't wait up. Where are you going shopping? Does it matter? I guess not. But Monica? Be careful out there. Apparently someone's watching. She paused on the bottom step, her hand gripping the banister. What are you trying to say, Eddie? I'm saying that in a town like Millfield, secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, everyone gets hurt. She went upstairs without another word. 20 minutes later, she left in her BMW, and the GPS tracker told me she was heading toward Brian's neighborhood. I spent the afternoon at Murphy's Tavern, sharing a beer with Frank and updating him on the morning's developments. You're playing with fire, Frank warned. If they figure out it was you, they won't. Brian's too arrogant to think a blue-collar guy like me could outmaneuver him, and Monica's too guilty to think straight. What's your endgame here, Eddie? I took a long pull from my beer and considered the question. You know what the worst part is, Frank? It's not that she's cheating. It's that she thinks I'm too stupid to figure it out. She's been lying to my face for months, treating me like I'm some kind of idiot who can't see what's right in front of him. So you want to humiliate her. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. She chose to blow up our marriage for a promotion and a rich boyfriend. Fine. But she doesn't get to do it quietly, and she doesn't get to make me look like a fool in the process. Just remember, Revenge is like a boomerang. Sometimes it comes back to hit you in the head. I'll take that chance. That evening, Monica came home with shopping bags from expensive stores, trying to act normal. She made dinner, asked about my day, even suggested we watch a movie together. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept checking her phone, the forced quality of her smiles. Around 10 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, just work stuff." But I could see it wasn't fine. Whatever message she'd received had shaken her badly. I found out why the next morning, when Frank called me at 8 a.m. "Eddie, you need to see this. Check the Millfield Gazette's website." I opened my laptop and navigated to our local newspaper's online edition. The headline made me smile. "Local attorney's home vandalized. Police investigating." The article was brief but detailed, describing the vandalism at Brian's condo, and mentioning that police were looking into possible motives. It quoted Brian as saying he had no idea who might have targeted him, but that he was confident the perpetrator would be caught. More interesting were the comments below the article. Millfield was a small town, and people loved to gossip. Several commenters speculated about Brian's personal life, his business dealings, and his recent behavior. One person mentioned seeing him at Brennan's with a young blonde woman several times recently. Another commenter, posting anonymously, wrote, "Maybe his wife finally found out about his extracurricular activities." Monica found the article an hour later. I heard her gasp from the kitchen, then the sound of her phone dialing. "Brian, have you seen the newspaper?" "Yes, online. They're talking about us in the comments. I don't know what to do." She was unraveling, and we were only in the second phase of my plan. By the time I was finished, Monica and Brian would understand exactly what it felt like to be underestimated.